Now we've reached D in our framework, and D stands for design, detail, and dimension, because naturally we have to take dimensions of how much lights we're using. You ever heard that saying, the devil is in the detail? Well, I prefer to say the design is in the detail. And this is where you take a regular installation and you apply that design detail to ensure that your job is not just good, but phenomenal. And this is where we scored a lot of stripes in our company when we just started, because we paid utmost attention to detail. And this is where you can come in as a specialist and help professionals in the industry, help high-end owners make good decisions. And that's what we've done and closed the gap to work on very large-scale projects. I'm going to give you the most common design detail challenge. Can it fit? So there are a lot of times where light sources are specified or some things are wanted, and you have to ask yourself, can it fit? So let's talk about ascertaining the dimensions of your profile. You may want to use a 1-inch profile in a 1/2-inch gypsum board. The designer might want to use a 1-inch profile because they don't know better into a cabinet. And you might tell them, you don't need to use this thick light. We have a very thinner light and you're going to get the same light effect. That's the simplest way of looking at design detail. But design detail could go into so many layers. And let me touch into those layers. In one of the most common applications is the trough light or the cove light. In our industry, we see many styles and designs of cove and trough lights. Some of them have a very thick opening. Some of them have a very wide opening. Some of them have a very narrow opening. Some of them have a high lip return that hides any sort of electrical work that goes in there. Some of them have a very thin detail. Some of them are very deep. Some of them are very shallow. In this area is where I've seen the most inconsistencies in the industry. And you, as a lighting specialist, you have to figure out what is that goal based on the A. Did the customer want an indirect light that affects the overall ambient lighting of the space? Or did the customer just want an indirect light to create an accent light to give that floating effect? Also, when installing in these areas, if the LED light is positioned incorrectly in that particular scenario, what can happen is you can get a sharp light cutoff. So instead of getting that wonderful uniform glow of light onto that ceiling, you're going to get a harsh, sharp line, and it's very unsightly. It even gets worse if there's flaws in the gypsum work. It's going to pick up the inconsistencies of that job. Another area where design detail is very important is stairs. You can have stairs being lit on the treader, on the riser, and you have to know if the material is going to be concrete, if the material is going to be wooden stairs, which tends to be the easiest, if the material is going to be a laminate flooring, if the stairs is going to be a tile. You're going to have to know all the different design details that are going to pop up and the type of lights to use in those situations. And we'll do a review of them to help you understand or plan your lighting installation in the future. Another area where design detail could work in the opposite way is you're doing some steel frame structure and your LED could be spec'd 1 inch. But because the steel structure is 2 inches wide, you may want to use a 2-inch wide LED enclosure so it looks like a seamless installation. In summary, design detail is the process of taking your installation from ordinary to extraordinary. You're going to consider finishes. You're going to consider structural elements. What is the ideal way to hide the wiring into that installation? You're going to consider, how do I probably make it maintainable, or what maintenance plan I could have in it for the future if it's something that's prone to getting dirty. All this is under the design detail. So we're going to look at a few jobs on the iPad, and I'm going to help you understand design detail by using some examples. Now, it's nearly impossible to show you every design detail. I'm still learning design details as they pop up because there's still a disconnect between when we come onto a project and when we're given a project. So we're always problem solving and thinking, how could we guide the architects or guide whoever's giving us the plan to integrate this lighting so it looks phenomenal. And if you use this process of design detail, what's going to happen is that your projects are going to go from here to the next level. That's how our business was built, because we were always thinking design detail, design detail. And that's the difference between what separated us from other people in the industry doing what we do. It was that design detail and that attention to detail. So if you're an architect or an interior designer, you always want to be particular with that design detail. And if you're an installer or electrician in this course, you always want to be mindful of how you can level up your service and your value by including that design detail element. Now, the final part of the D is the dimension. So naturally, the dimension is going to lead into our E, the engineering, and we're going to measure the lengths of all the lights that are required in this project. We're going to also measure all the lengths of wires that may be required in this project. So we could take those measurements and we could put it onto our engineering aspect, where we're going to calculate power and other necessary calculations to ensure that your wiring system is well designed and robust.